This video will be about multiplying and dividing real numbers. Mostly what I'll be talking about is multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers and the rules for that. The rules for multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers are the same. It's different for adding and subtracting, but for multiplying and dividing it's the same. Multiplying or dividing two numbers with the same sign results in a positive answer. Okay, so I put a bunch of examples here for you. 2 times 3 is 6. Negative 2 times negative 3 is also 6 because they have the same negative sign. 12 divided by 3 equals 4. Again, 12 and 3 have the same sign, so it's a positive answer. Negative 12 divided by negative 3 is 4 because they have the same sign. Positive answer. The same is true if you put a fraction in there. So 1/2 times 4 is a positive 2. Negative 1/2 times negative 4 is also a positive 2. Remember, a fraction bar, like as in 20 over 2, means division, so 20 divided by 2 is 10, and negative 20 divided by negative 2 is 10. So anytime you're multiplying or dividing two numbers with the same sign, you get a positive answer. When you're multiplying or dividing two numbers with different signs, you will always get a negative answer. So in this case, we have a positive 6 divided by a negative 2. Well, we know 6 divided by 2 is 3, but since these are two different signs, we get a negative. And it doesn't matter where the negative is. The negative could be the second number or the first number, as shown in this example. So negative 2 divided by 6 is also negative 3. Again, this fraction here shows division, so a negative divided by positive is a negative. Up here, we have 4 times negative 5 equals negative 20. Again, I then move the negative to the beginning to show that it's still negative, so it doesn't matter which number it is. That is negative. If you have one negative, one positive, you will always get a negative answer. And down here I'm showing you the same is true when you have fractions. So negative 1/3 times 3/4 equals negative 1/4. Before we get to square roots, let me talk quickly about when there's more than two things. So if you had like negative 2 times 3 times negative 4, for instance, so now we have three things being multiplied together. All you do is just take them two at a time and use those same rules. So in this case, the negative 2 times 3 would be a negative number, and then later, or after you do that, you would then multiply it by the negative 4. And again, the rule is a negative times a negative is positive, so then you end up with 24. So there's no specific rules for when you have more than two numbers. You just have to do it two at a time using the existing rules. We talked a little bit about square roots. Since 3 times 3 is 9, and then negative 3 times negative 3 is also 9, the square root of 9 could be either 3 or negative 3, or we could say 3 and negative 3. So this symbol here, right here, that means positive square root. That doesn't actually mean square root, although we often say it like that. The square root of 9 equals 3. This actually just means the positive root of 9 is 3. If you want the negative square root, you have to put this negative sign in front of it. Negative square root of 9 is negative 3. If you just want the square root of 9, that means you want both the positive and the negative values. You use this sign here. So you could say that you want plus minus root 9, or that really just means the square root of 9. I want the positive and the negative version, and you can show it like this, as in plus and minus 3. So when you're dividing fractions, it looks more complicated than it is. For instance, here, if you want the value of x over y when x and y are fractions, it looks complicated if you write it like this, x over y. But as you know, this x over y really just means x divided by y. So this actually looks a lot simpler if you just write it as a division problem, like this, because then, as you know from last year, when you divide fractions, all you really need to do is multiply by the reciprocal of the fractions. And so you just get negative 9 over negative 8. A negative 9 divided by a negative 8 is the same as 9 over 8. Or you could just do 9 over 8 and then deal with the negatives and realize a negative times a negative is a positive, and you'd be fine that way. So remember, whenever you get a fraction over a fraction, or like a complex fraction, just turn it into a division problem, and that'll make it a lot simpler. And that's it for tonight's video.